When I was 15, I lived in the kind of place folks in Georgia would call out in the sticks. My nights were filled with staying up late, engrossed in video games with friends. We rarely called it a night before 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. On this particular night, exhaustion hung heavy in the air, especially for me, having endured a tough day at work. It was around 1:30 in the morning when one of my friends logged off briefly to grab some food. Seizing the opportunity, I rose from my PlayStation and ambled over to the window. The storm from earlier still lingered, and I was curious to gauge its intensity. Across the street, a lone street lamp flickered to life, casting an eerie glow on the surroundings. As I brushed the blinds aside, my gaze fixated on a cherry tree standing sentinel since we moved in. My blood ran cold, and time seemed to freeze me in place. Under the tree stood a creature, unnaturally tall and thin, its pallid form unmistakably inhuman. It wore no clothes, and its lack of discernible gender features perplexed me. Suppressing a scream, I knew making noise might invite whatever this thing was to my doorstep. Its mouth harbored fangs, reminiscent of fantasy game orcs, but longer and more menacing. I couldn't tear my eyes away, but I mustered the strength to slowly back away, desperate to feel the security of closed blinds. My heart pounded, and I fought the urge to scream, fearing the creature's acute hearing. Just then, my phone rang, breaking the silence. I hesitated but ultimately answered, keeping my friend on the line, all the while praying I wouldn't catch a glimpse of those red eyes behind the blinds. A week passed, and another late night found me immersed in painting tabletop game models. 2 o'clock in the morning approached, and I couldn't shake the habit of checking for that unearthly presence. As the blinds parted, there it was, pressed against my window. Its height obscured its face, leaving only a lanky, inhuman chest in my line of sight. I released a shaky breath, paralyzed with fear. For the rest of that night, I lay in bed, haunted by the image. Even now, from time to time, I'll cast a wary glance out my window. Sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I see that creature lurking by the tree, watching. When I was 11, quite a while ago now, there's this memory that still gives me the creeps. My friend and I were strolling down my street, feeling bored and restless, when we decided to venture into the woods near my house for a bit of exploration. Picture this place in your mind. It's a mix of farmland and woods, with hay bales scattered across the open fields. After wrapping up our little adventure, we were gearing up to leave the woods when things took an unsettling turn. We noticed a towering figure approaching us, clad in a hoodie with the hood pulled low, obscuring their face. The sun was setting, making it difficult to see the stranger clearly. I couldn't tell if he had spotted us, but when he looked up, he crouched behind a hay bale, intermittently peeking out to observe us. Instinctively, my friend and I devised a plan before exiting the woods. As I neared the hay bale where the mysterious figure lurked, I pulled out my phone and pretended to call my dad, whom I then pretended was a police officer. I spoke loudly, using keywords that the man could hear. Strangely, he continued to shadow us, leaping from hay bale to hay bale while keeping a watchful eye. I began to doubt whether my ruse was working. The man, seemingly undeterred, persisted in following and spying on us. Then, in a bizarre twist, he simply vanished. Perhaps he had stood up and slipped away during the few seconds we weren't looking. When we no longer saw him, panic set in, and my friend and I sprinted back to the house at full speed. We never encountered the man again, and to this day, we remain clueless about his intentions. I often wonder what might have happened if we hadn't spotted him. If he was just a passerby, he wouldn't have engaged in such strange and unsettling behavior, hiding and following us as we made our way back home. It was my 6th grade year, and my friends and I had built a little fort of scrap wood deep in the woods surrounding my house. One evening, around 8:30 p.m., my friend Matthew and I decided to head out to that fort. As we walked, I couldn't shake off an eerie feeling, and halfway there, I heard something that sent shivers down my spine, the sound of a little girl crying. I turned to Matthew, my heart pounding, and asked if he heard it too. He admitted that he had been hearing it since we entered the woods but thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Terrified, we began scanning our surroundings, and in our nervousness, we ended up wandering off the path. Suddenly, I almost stumbled into a trapdoor in the ground. It was a small door that I had never seen before. I pointed it out to Matthew, asking if he thought it went anywhere. He shook his head, urging us to go back. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what was inside. We pulled a flashlight from his backpack, and as I opened the door, the crying of the little girl intensified. The sound seemed to be coming from right in front of us. It echoed through the darkness, making our hearts race. In that moment, fear took over, and both of us screamed in unison. Without a second thought, we turned and ran back to the safety of our house. We avoided the woods for another month, haunted by the vivid memory of that chilling experience. To this day, the sound of that little girl's cries echoes in my mind, as clear as the night we stumbled upon that mysterious trapdoor. During spring break, when I was 12 and my cousin was 9, we decided to explore the deep woods near a cabin after having a great time at a stylized restaurant. My aunt mentioned that there used to be a swing behind the restaurant, and with her approval, we eagerly headed through the back door entrance. As we walked down the path, the anticipation built up. Eventually, we stumbled upon an old, dirty, and torn-up couch near a tall pine tree. Ignoring the odd sight, we continued and soon found a swing set and a slide. However, my excitement turned into a sense of dread that lingered as my cousin happily swung around. My gaze shifted, and there it was, a monkey bar set with a large black cord loosely wrapped around the top. A yellow cord dangled from it, with a light fixture at the end that resembled a hanging. To my horror, a toy baby doll hung from the black cord, a few feet away from a human-sized doghouse. The doghouse sent shivers down my spine, and I felt an urgent need to leave. I whispered to my cousin about the unsettling discovery, and she joined me, gasping and jumping back. "Do you hear that?" she exclaimed. "There's someone breathing in that doghouse, there's someone in it." A sense of fear enveloped us as we strained to hear. Suddenly, a distant high-pitched whirring sound echoed above us. Without a second thought, we turned and ran. Now, at 15, the memory still haunts me, and the idea of going back to that restaurant fills me with fear and confusion about what we stumbled upon in those eerie woods. It was during a summer holiday here in London, UK, and we decided to spend the night camping in the woods. As the evening progressed, an eerie feeling settled in, casting a shadow over our attempts to enjoy the night. We gathered around the campfire, trying to lighten the mood, but as midnight approached, a strange occurrence sent shivers down our spines. Out of the darkness, we heard footsteps, someone walking stealthily around us. I mustered the courage to call out, asking who it was, but my words hung unanswered in the air. The footsteps persisted, growing louder and more unsettling. Then, as if the night itself held its breath, the footsteps ceased, only to be replaced by the most bone-chilling scream I had ever heard. It wasn't a distant or muffled cry, it was a piercing, feminine scream that seemed to echo from every direction. The voice pleaded for help, the same line repeated with an eerie precision. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as the chilling sound surrounded us. Uncertainty gripped us. Was someone truly in distress, or was this some otherworldly encounter? The fear that gripped me in that moment was unlike anything I had experienced before. Without hesitation, we abandoned the campsite, fleeing into the night as fast as our legs could carry us. To this day, I'm haunted by the memory of that inexplicable and terrifying night in the woods. I remember that cool spring evening during my senior year of high school. It was a routine day, and after finishing my homework, I headed to my friend Jenna's acreage where I kept my horse, Jojo. The plan was simple: practice riding for upcoming competitions in the summer. Little did I know, that evening would be far from relaxing. As I arrived, I noticed an unusual quietness. No one was home. Jenna's mom, brother, and sister were all out. I brushed it off, accustomed to riding alone around their open acreage. Retrieving Jojo from the pasture, a strange sound caught my attention from the northwest of the barn. Ignoring it, I began preparing for the ride. Suddenly, a male scream pierced the air, filled with agony and desperation. "Help, Courtney, please help me." The voice was unfamiliar, and panic set in. I rushed towards the north side, thinking something had happened to Jenna's dad, Alan. Jojo's reaction confirmed it wasn't my imagination. Her ears pointed in the direction of the screams, nostrils flaring. Another scream, and Jojo grunted in response. I hastily got her tacked up, mounted, and galloped south, wanting to escape the haunting cries. Stopping atop a hill about a quarter-mile from the barn, I tried to make sense of what I'd heard. Terrified, I turned back, realizing I couldn't be anywhere near that place. I put Jojo in the pasture and drove home, shaken. The next day, the same eerie silence greeted me, and I went on another ride, haunted by the previous day's screams. Again, the cries echoed, closer this time. "Please help me, Courtney, please." I sprinted into the barn, grabbed Jojo's bridle, and we galloped away, attempting to distance ourselves from the mysterious sounds. Reaching the top of the hill near another patch of woods, the screams persisted. "Help, please." This time, it was different, coming from the woods. I shivered, panic rising. I called out, desperately seeking an answer, but all I got was the unsettling plea, "Please help me, Courtney, please." I urged Jojo back towards the barn, yet the screams continued relentlessly. The fear intensified, and I needed answers. Ignoring my instincts, Jojo and I ventured down the north trail. I spotted movement at the edge of the woods, and the screams grew louder. A deer sprinted out in a panic, its behavior strange, like it was fleeing from something unseen. Despite the rising tension, we pressed on. The closer we got, the louder the screams became. When we reached the edge of the woods, they abruptly stopped, replaced by a whisper, a high-pitched yet masculine voice pleading, "Will you please help me?" Jojo bolted, and I clung to her, fear coursing through me. Back at the pasture, I thanked Jojo and assured her of my love before leaving. As I got into my car, a haunting voice echoed, "No, you will need to help me." I drove away without looking back, haunted by the inexplicable events. Yesterday, 6 months later, Jojo and I went for another ride. No screams this time, but Jojo refused to go near those woods. It served as a chilling reminder that some things in the woods should remain untouched, hidden horrors that defy logic and reason. I reside in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in northeast Georgia, surrounded by the beauty of expansive national forests and captivating state parks. Despite the breathtaking scenery, my hometown is plagued by poverty. While a few outsiders from places like Atlanta have settled in, many locals struggle financially. As a freelance technical writer with the flexibility to work online, I found myself contemplating a move elsewhere due to the limited opportunities in my small town. The town, east of a massive national forest, offers only a handful of employment options, including Walmart, fast food establishments, and a couple of grocery stores. The allure of the untouched wilderness, dotted with camping sites and hiking trails, beckons me to explore, especially with my dog as a companion. Yet, the experience can be unnerving at times, particularly when tales of vehicle break-ins at trailheads or encounters with questionable characters on rough Forest Service roads circulate. A few years ago, I embarked on a paintball expedition turned camping trip with 2 friends in the national forest. Our initial camping spot was occupied by a church group, pushing us to venture deeper into the woods as darkness descended. Guided only by our GPS and lacking cell service, we took an unfamiliar road marked by a makeshift barrier. With our trusty F-150's high clearance, we navigated the obstacle and found an open space near a creek to set up camp. As we settled in, a peculiar atmosphere unfolded. Trash littered the surroundings, and a strange glow emanated from over a nearby hill. Intrigued yet cautious, fueled by a few rum and cokes, my friends and I decided to investigate. The journey to the source of the glow led us through an area where tree trunks bore circles devoid of bark, an oddity that puzzled us. Suddenly, my friend Jacob tripped and yelled, causing the mysterious glow to extinguish. A sense of unease crept in, prompting us to abandon our pursuit. Returning to camp, we noticed our friend Isaac acting strangely, clad in a hooded coat and carrying his paintball gun. The campfire had dwindled, making it difficult to discern the scene clearly. Isaac's behavior became more perplexing when we discovered he had supposedly been in the tent all along, wearing a different jacket. Someone had been wandering around our campsite in his likeness. A sinking feeling gripped us, and as we checked our truck, everything appeared undisturbed. The realization struck: an imposter had infiltrated our camp. Unable to shake the fear, we hastily packed up, leaving the folded tent with sleeping bags behind. As we approached the dirt hump with the earlier makeshift barrier, we found it mysteriously back in place. Tapping it cautiously with the truck, we proceeded, only to notice a vehicle trailing us with its lights off. The pursuit continued down Forest Service roads, the mystery vehicle maintaining a consistent distance. After a tense 45 minutes, we reached the main paved road, opting for a different route to ensure safety. The ordeal was a stark reminder of the thin line between the excitement of rural camping and the potential dangers that lurk within the wilderness. I've since passed that dirt hump, always finding the barrier in place, a haunting reminder that I'll never tread that road again. When I was 14, my dad and I used to go hunting together, and we had access to this enormous piece of land in Georgia owned by a guy who seemed to own half the state. He was generous enough to let people hunt there if he trusted them, and if he liked you enough, he'd even let you camp out for a couple of nights. The property was vast, and the whole experience of camping out there was something I loved more than just a few hours of hunting. One early morning, we decided to hike into the woods. It was still dark when we reached our stand, but strangely, there was no sign of any wildlife, not even birds. I remember my dad commenting on the eerie silence, but at the time, we didn't think much of it. Frustrated, we packed up and decided to find a spot to camp. Later that evening, we ventured deeper into the woods, hoping for better luck. We set up a small camp in a clearing, passed the time talking about Bigfoot and other woodland creatures, and then headed out to our blind. Again, there was nothing, no sign or sound of any animals. Returning to our camp, we found our tent pulled up and laid flat, not neatly but as if something had disturbed it. We brushed it off, attributing it to the wind or a collapse we hadn't noticed. Despite the odd occurrences, we decided to stay the night and try again the next day. As night fell, we built a small fire and relaxed, but the absence of even bird sounds felt peculiar. In the pitch-black middle of the night, I woke up for no apparent reason. Trying to go back to sleep, I found myself in that half-awake, half-asleep phase when I heard laughter. It startled me, and although I dismissed it as a dream, it returned louder a few minutes later. Now fully awake, I realized my dad heard it too. It wasn't a dream, it was real. The laughter, resembling several people laughing in unison, lasted only a few seconds, but the fear it instilled was overwhelming. We didn't hear anything more after that, and the night was restless. With the first light of dawn, we hastily packed up and left. My dad suspected someone had followed us, playing a prank to scare off wildlife and make us think we were crazy. Despite his theory, we didn't return for over a month. When my dad finally did, he mentioned the incident to the property owner, who, for some undisclosed reason, forbade my dad from hunting there anymore. It left us with an unsettling feeling, and to this day, it's a story that gives me goosebumps, even if no one believes it. In my final year before retiring from the army, navigating the tumultuous waters of divorce, I found solace in a small two-bedroom rental in the isolated town of Indian Mound, Tennessee. Positioned amidst conservation land and a swamp, the serenity was a welcome escape from the suburban chaos I'd grown tired of. Returning home one foggy night after a Nashville concert, a peculiar encounter marked the beginning of an unsettling chapter. A massive black dog, eerily fixated on me, stood in the front yard before darting into the swamp as I cautiously approached. Initially dismissing it, I soon discovered that Indian Mound held more than just tranquility. Night after night, around 3 a.m., mysterious voices whispered outside my window, their words just out of grasp. Footsteps echoed in the darkness, and I'd peer out only to find nothing. A strange frequency of disturbances grew over months, culminating in a chilling incident. At 2:57 a.m., a piercing light invaded my home, emanating from the swamp. Racing outside, threatening to call the authorities, the light abruptly vanished, and a retreating figure disappeared into the swamp. Police took note, advising heightened security. Hypervigilant, I secured doors, slept with drawn shades, yet the eerie occurrences persisted. Footsteps encircled my home, occasional phantom dog panting, and untraceable sounds heightened my anxiety. The tension peaked when a dreamy voice called my name, jolting me awake. Yet, the disembodied voice persisted, and as I rose, a thunderous pounding on my front door sent shivers down my spine. Fueled by fear, I warned the unseen intruder, armed and ready. Miraculously, the pounding ceased. Law enforcement arrived, but no damage or trace of the trespasser lingered. In the final months of my lease, armed with a 9mm, the disturbances ceased as abruptly as they began. Now back in the familiar landscape of Texas suburbs, the haunting memories of the enigmatic backwoods of Tennessee linger as a testament to the eerie tales that can unfold in the quietest corners of the world. Several years ago, my friends Sean, Melanie, and I delved into the captivating world of geocaching. Armed with Sean's brand-new, feature-laden GPS unit, we embarked on local adventures to familiarize ourselves with the game. Eager to test our mettle, we decided to tackle expert-rated, tough caches that led us to northeastern Connecticut, an area known as the Quiet Corner. This remote corner of the world offered little in terms of civilization, just winding wooded roads with sparsely spaced houses. Our journey took place on an overcast and misty day, intensifying the isolation we felt from the outside world. Our destination for the day was a series of caches hidden in the heart of the woods, promising both challenge and adventure. The first cache awaited us in an unusual location, the middle of a one-way bridge connecting two causeways over a wooded pond. It was attached to the steel guard rail by a magnet, dangling precariously over the water. As we fumbled through the search for nearly 20 minutes, a disheveled older man in a car drove by multiple times. At first, we dismissed him as lost, but as he circled back, chills ran down our spines. What was initially a triumphant discovery turned into a realization that we might not be alone. To our dismay, the cache turned out to be a multi-cache, meaning we had to uncover the first one to get coordinates for the next. The second cache was a few miles away, and we eagerly left the unsettling bridge behind. Nestled near the Rhode Island border, surrounded by woods and with a state park nearby, the second location heightened our sense of isolation. As we searched along an abandoned rail line, we heard only one passing car, heading deeper into the woods towards the border. Our anxiety peaked when, upon returning to our car, a vehicle approached from the direction of the border. It was the same disheveled man from the bridge, miles away from where we first encountered him. Serious concern set in as we questioned his intentions. Thankfully, with a few houses around, he drove off, and we decided to take a circuitous route to our next destination, hoping to lose him. With Sean behind the wheel, we sped through wooded roads, our knuckles turning white with tension. Eventually, we believed we had outsmarted our pursuer. The third cache location took us even deeper into the woods, miles from the previous two. No signs of civilization were in sight, just us, the trees, and the thick fog that had settled in. Feeling a false sense of security, we set out on foot into the woods. However, the sound of tires on gravel shattered our calm. Darting off the trail and hiding in the bushes, we watched as the disheveled man drove by, inspecting our car. The minutes felt like hours as he slowly passed, disappearing around a bend. Knowing we had limited time, we sprinted back to our car and sped away in the opposite direction. Seeking refuge, we hid the car in my brother-in-law's parents' driveway, their absence providing a temporary sanctuary. Sean, a towering figure resembling Hagrid from Harry Potter, with a car trunk resembling a horror show prop room, armed us with an assortment of weaponry. After a nerve-wracking wait, our stalker returned, circling the area in his car. In an unexpected twist, we chose to finish the geocache, discovering a trove of cool prizes. Our stalker never resurfaced, sparing himself from Sean's protective instincts. To this day, it remains the creepiest experience of my life, a geocaching adventure turned chilling encounter in the quiet corner.